So this morning for our time of testimony, we'll be hearing from Stephen Lee. Stephen, if you'll recognize him, he recently shared his testimony about being baptized, and he was also one of the attendees of the trip to Ecuador. So if you would welcome up Stephen for us.
Thank you. So I'll just say it point blank. Ecuador was amazing. It's my first Ecuadorian trip here, or excuse me, my first Ecuadorian trip over there, first mission trip, and it was so amazing that I'm losing my words. We were there for 5 days, and I will say I honestly almost didn't go because of financial reasons, but I did go, and it was worth every penny. Just to give you a synopsis of what we did there, we basically were a group that provided small healthcare services, as well as provide food, some supplies, and also spread the word of God, most importantly, through our skits, through our song, and through balloon animals. And I think we made balloon animals for the kids and the villagers, and that must have been like, out of everything that we provided, that was like the biggest hit, balloon animals, because they were just like eating it up. But I learned a few things there in Ecuador. This past year has just been amazing for me spiritually. And a few lessons I learned. The first lesson was that what you do, make sure you do it with a purpose, a meaningful purpose. And when I went there, right, so for me being 30, like, I always do the comparison game, and I look at other people, right, I look at my friends who are doctors, lawyers, like these big shots, and they make lots of money, they're just buying their second house as an investment, and I think to myself, like, man, I need to get there, right, I need to be at that status, right, if I'm there, then, that will define my happiness, but that's not always the case. When I went to Ecuador, we went to these villages in the jungle, and literally in the jungle where they live in huts, they live in these wooden houses, and there are wild animals in there, so it just gives you that idea. You really feel like you're in a Discovery Channel. And I was just amazed. Just a very big culture shock for me. And these people basically have to survive. They have to survive. They work to live, right? If they don't go to work, then they don't feed their family for a day. And so all my problems, my first world problems, just didn't seem to matter anymore. And I really questioned myself personally. I was like, well, at work, right, am I putting most of my time in my career why? Because I want to make more money? And why do I want to make more money? And the truth I had to ask myself was, well, probably because I want to be at that higher status in society. So that was something I had to reevaluate with myself. The second lesson I learned is that anything that you do, the smallest action, the smallest act of love can have a big impact. And just one quick story. We were in one village, and we were packing up to go to another village. And so on our way to the bus, Josh Ritter and I, we were walking, and we saw the village leader talk to one of our Ecuadorian contacts. She was big help in our trip, and she asked us to pray with the leader of the village. And I was like, sure, why not? And so we were praying, and as she was praying, she was speaking in Spanish, and what I could hear was that we were asking for healing for one of the villagers that was sick. And they didn't know, in these villages, people don't really know the medical knowledge as we do, so they weren't sure if he was going to die or not. Therefore, he was relying on us to pray for him. The village leader was relying on us to pray for one of his villagers. And that was huge. And so after we prayed, the Ecuadorian lady that we were with was like, trust in God, put everything in his hands and everything will be fine. And I saw his face and he was pretty much like, okay, right? And he probably doesn't know what prayer is. In these villages, they probably don't know like how to pray. But even us saying that, hey, we're going to pray for you and we're going to think about you even after we leave was just, it was a small act of love that I know he didn't show it, but it does have a big impact. This past year, I've learned that more and more God is love. God is love through our words and through our actions. And even in the smallest actions, we can have that big impact. But, we can show love in many ways, not just people in Ecuador, not just people in villages, but, people here in Florida. You have homeless out there as well in Florida that need help. But even so, those people who don't have the quality of life as us, we can show love even to our friends and to our family. And we can do that through, like I said, through the smallest acts of love. Saying you can pray for someone or I'll be there for you goes a long way. In conclusion, I encourage everyone next year to go to Ecuador. It definitely has inspired me, so thank you.